then. Witnesses testify in favor of this bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have Mike Harder here. He is a former judge of Winsville and currently is very successful in doing legal work in this area.
Okay. Remind all witnesses that they'll need to fill out a witness form for any testimony this evening.
Yes, sir. Is the form point to it? Okay. I was going to, if it's allowed, I was just going to address a couple of the concerns that I heard come up. Ms. Black, or Representative Black, was talking about the appellate process. And then Mr. Ellington referred to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has not made a ruling yet. The Eastern and Western districts have. They're absolutely void on their face. The current statute and ordinances conflict so much so that they're void on their face. One of the problems that both courts have had is there's been a rebuttable presumption that the driver of the car is in the car simply by the fact that the car is in the intersection and the license plate is registered to that owner. They said that's a problem. So Ms. Black's question specifically is there an appellate process? Well, there has been some level of appellate process in place, but it's illegal. It presumes that the driver's in the car, and so they've really not had the ample opportunity to appeal it correctly. Additionally, most appellate processes that I've seen, you have to send it out to a foreign state. It's not here in Missouri, and it's not at the municipality itself. You get a form, it's like Representative Rohrer said, an officer typically does review the footage, and then they make a decision about whether it was a right on red, that you didn't stop all the way, or if you actually were in the middle of the section before it was all clear on all the signals while the other cars were waiting or something. But once they do issue the ticket, it's generated as it looks about like this. It's got a print about half the size of most of this, and it tells you what it is you can do to get it back into the court system. When we regularly get a ticket, we go to court at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night or 9:30 on a Monday morning. Pretty routine process. Most of you in here probably experienced it or a relative. On the other tickets, they're so automated and obscured that, just like Representative Spencer was indicating, the appellate process really is non-existent. I was a Winsville municipal judge up until 2011. We had red light cameras. I can tell you that most people don't like getting a speeding ticket, failure to maintain a single lane, a stoplight, a left turn, but by gosh, when they come to court, they deal with it, right? And if the officer testifies that they were doing it, they have their chance to speak up, and the judge or the jury in some cases can help make that decision. I didn't really come across anyone that I remember that was happy that they got a camera ticket, that the respect for what it is, versus, safety versus revenue, was very on the utmost of everyone's mind. And time again, as people would come before me, they would say, this is just a money grab and blah, blah. And I had always heard that a lot of people thought municipal courts throughout metropolitan areas were revenue-driven entities. And I think a lot of people do presume that. But when the camera technology starts rifling out the tickets, people start to think of it more of like an indirect tax. And then you add that you have to come in and you say, look, I'm a male. There's a girl driving the car, no question. It can't be me. And the prosecutor says, well, who do you think it was? I don't know. Could it have been your daughter? Maybe. Well, just sign her name over here. We'll just issue a new ticket to your daughter and you're free to go. Well, a lot of people, probably all you guys here who may have a daughter or son, not a very fun thing to start pointing the fingers at your children and relatives and things. Mr. Rohrer, Representative Rohrer also brought up T-bones. You can do an internet search, and at any time you can get whatever type of statistical analysis results that you want pretty much on these red light cameras, it seems. My experience is, as I've gone through the research and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is that T-bones are typically somebody who's texting and driving, drinking and driving, correcting their kids in the back seat. The fact that you get a red light camera ticket at an intersection does, as far as I know, nothing to do with preventing T-bone accidents. It's just, they don't go hand in hand. I mean, everybody in here has got their ability to logic through issues. You guys are representatives. You can deduce things based on facts and circumstances that you live through in your life. And think about it. If you know that there's a red light camera at a place, and what's the chances that you're avoiding it because you were going to speed through it at 75 miles an hour for a T-bone like they play on TV all the time, or if you're going to accidentally come through there because you're distracted or doing something. That's where those typically occur in my assessment. And I think a lot of research, depending on which one you find yourself looking at, will back that up. And without a doubt, I don't think there's any research that does not show that rear-end collisions at every intersection that's ever had red light cameras, it goes up. I've never seen any research statistics that say they go down. They only go up. People get afraid of yellow lights. The definition of a yellow light takes on a very different meaning when you think there's a camera around things. People are screeching to a halt. The reason that we need the law to outlaw at this minute, just like Representative Ellington was saying, there's two courts, Eastern and Western, who both ruled that they're void on their face. But you've got a lot of municipalities, I'm fighting in a couple of them, and I guess you guys probably know I'm not here very even-handed about my delivery of the information here to you, but a lot of municipal courts, even if they're in the Eastern District and they're duty-bound as an Eastern District municipal court to follow that Eastern District's rules, they're not doing it. They're saying, well, the Missouri Supreme Court has not accepted it on transfer yet, so we don't have to abide by the ruling of the Eastern District. Well, that's simply not true. You, as an Eastern District municipal court, are bound, and you have to endeavor to do what it is that your Eastern District is trying to make you do. And for you to say, I'm going to push, I know 3 or 4 municipalities in St. Louis who are pushing their entire docket back to June or July, hoping and praying that $5 million, $10 million are not about to evaporate through the courtroom ceiling tiles, because they're hoping the Missouri Supreme Court accepts it on transfer and then miraculously overturns 2 or 3 appellate courts that are in complete unison right now. I don't know what's going to happen, but our Constitution federally says we have the right to a speedy trial. You know, and if prosecutors, if a defendant would come and say, can you just push my trial back till June of 2014 to see if the law changes here? I hear they're working on the being within 1,000 feet of a park statute. I'd rather wait till it's 500 or something. Many judges would say, no, the law's the law right now, we'll figure it out. But on the opposite side, the prosecutors are pushing these cases back for half a year to see what's going to happen. And it's very, very confusing to me.
Sir, I don't mean to cut you off, but we have
Oh,
several more
no, you
bills,
get
and
the
I would
gist.
like to give people time to ask you questions if they have.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for this witness? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carter, was it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you were a judge in the municipal court, so tell me, does every defendant in your court have a right to a de novo appeal before the circuit court?
Not the circuit court. If they lose at a hearing or a trial for $30, they can appeal it then to the sitting circuit judges that hears municipal appeal cases, but only in the event you're found guilty by the judge upon a full trial.
Right. But it's a de novo. They get to start from scratch. You get to present evidence.
Right.
Okay. And you raised this point a couple times about the problem the court had with this rebuttable presumption. So why not just pass legislation that creates this rebuttable presumption at law and state statutes that the courts have essentially said municipalities do not have the authority to create?
The same courts ruled, there was a backlog of discovery, which is a process when legal parties are fighting where they can force each other to divulge information that they otherwise don't have. There was a backup about whether the attorney Ryan Keene, who's handled all these cases, met him, know him, interviewed him, and worked with him, that they weren't allowing him to get discovery on the safety versus revenue aspect at these municipalities, because they didn't want to invade the province of, like, the legislature, the sitting council, as to what it was that they determined was the real reason for them to implement the camera program.
But
So-
yeah, I wouldn't let that in if I were a judge either. I
Right.
don't know how that would be relevant to the case.
It is, because if they've allowed them now at the appellate court
Except
reason,
that
they've allowed to conduct discovery now to find out if the political process was bet more on safety or if it was actually about revenue and indirect tax on the consumer. So we're going to know this through ATS, the American Traffic
But that's
Solutions, and
not,
other things.
that's not why the court, in those Ellisville,
It's not.
Arnold, the KC case, that's
Both-
not why they're throwing them out.
Both of them pontificate on for about 5 to 11 pages about their deep and grave concerns about the tension between public safety versus revenue. Yes, and they are now allowing the lower courts to have the parties endeavor to find out what it was that actually compelled this. In Chicago, they just had a massive
That seems
fraud
odd to me,
case.
because the question before the court should be whether the person accused is guilty or not.
If there's some esoteric constitutional law at the state level here in Missouri and then also in our sister states that shows if you can show that a political body endeavored to actually ensnare
Rich itself.
money, yes, that then can outweigh what it is that normally is avoided by the court as invading the province of the legislature. And this is very,
Very esoteric.
it's
The
very
whole
esoteric.
argument,
Well, it's not esoteric. It's surprising. Even the attorney who had lost the argument 2 or 3 times couldn't believe that 2 courts on either side of the state decided, we're going to let you find out through emails and otherwise. Why do you want red light cameras in your town? Who knows what's going to happen? But
Well, I mean, my answer, I think anybody up here that supports public safety would say to reduce accidents. So but your contention is that it doesn't really reduce accidents, it increases rear end accidents because people stop for yellow and red lights. That's why accidents increase, because people stop for lights?
it's not my contention, the way you worded it. No, a good example is the officers in the community, as they interact with citizens at every minute of the day and give you a stoplight ticket, they exercise some discretion. And they have a
But so are the people,
They have a
20% discretion on
they have a 360
issuing these tickets.
and they have a 360 view of what's going on. A camera does not. It's probably about 100 degrees or something. And it's hard from the officer who does review the footage to do that. And more importantly, I've heard several judges in St. Louis County tell me that Timothy McVeigh was picked up on a traffic warrant from the Oklahoma bombing. So a camera can't do that when you get...
Well, I'm glad you raised that point, because it's my understanding that these have been a great tool for law enforcement, that not only in investigating traffic-related crimes, but in trying to apprehend bank robbers or other criminals leaving the scene of a crime, going through an intersection or potentially going through an intersection that's nearby, that's